Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Flexitricity's first ever live video stream. So we hope this works and we hope you can all see and hear us. My name is Andy Lowe. I head up the business development team here at Flexitricity. I'm joined by Ramage, who's our Chief Executive Officer, and Dr Alastair Martin, who's our Chief Strategy Officer. We've a really good mix of existing energy partners, developers, investors, some DNOs, end users of power, with National Grid with us, and we also have a number of consultancies and other aggregators on the session. So it's great to see so much interest in Flexitricity Plus, which is what we're here to talk about today. This is designed to be an interactive Q&A session for the next hour running through Flexitricity Plus. I'll hand over to Alastair in a few moments, who'll give you a brief overview of the service, and then we'll dive straight into the questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions ahead of the session. We've 22 to get through today, but I'd also like to really encourage everyone to submit questions on the chat function that you'll see on your screens. We'll see those at our end and we'll try and shoehorn those in. If we don't have time to get through all of the questions today, then we will reply and provide written answers to the questions. And also, after this session, the link will be available on YouTube. So hopefully it's going to be very useful for everyone. And if you want to share it with colleagues or industry contacts, then please feel free to do so. So thank you again for your time today. I hope it's going to be really useful for you. I'll hand over to Alastair now to give a brief overview of Flexitricity Plus.
Thanks, Andy. So Flexitricity Plus came about as a response to the change in the electricity markets. When Flexitricity went live operationally in 2008, we were looking at a market that was dominated by nuclear, gas, and coal. And what we were delivering was forward contracted reserve and response services into a market that seemed fairly static, where it was all about managing the peaks and the pickups, and load profiles were pretty predictable. That's changed now. So we have a wind-driven and solar-driven market now, and the inflexibility of some of the traditional resources like nuclear is a significant part of why this picture has changed as well, and falling load factors on fossil plant. So in this new market, the right thing to do is to bring the industrial, commercial, public sector energy user or small generator owner right into the heart of the electricity market in two forms. One is direct market access, so that they can, rather than taking the electricity price as a given externally, they can actually manage their own energy prices and manage their own risk directly. And the other side of it is to take them into the heart of real-time system balancing, because the needs of the system are such that balancing it in real time with active customers is what the system needs. So Flexitricity Plus is a response to that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Alastair. So we'll jump straight into the questions here. I'd just like to encourage everyone again, please do use the chat function and submit questions through your computers, and we'll answer those as we run through the session. The first question that was pre-submitted: why is Flexitricity becoming a supplier? So I'll post that one to you, Ron.
Yeah, I think I've answered this one many times in the past. So fundamentally what we're doing here is we are providing transparency for energy consumers and generators who wish to proactively participate in the markets to optimize their flexibility. That's what it's all about. We're not intending to build a large supply portfolio. That's not the game we're in here. This is a niche offering that we want to meet the needs of proactive, flexible generation and load. And obviously the balancing mechanism is a significant part of that. And it will afford our contracted customers and energy partners the opportunity to benefit from the short-term volatility that's within that market, to optimize their energy usage and generation. So it's about transparency and opening up the markets to flexible generation and flexible load who are willing to proactively participate in the marketplace.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ron. Is National Grid not opening up the BM in any way in the near future? And I'm going to tie this into another question which we were asked ahead of the session. How does this compare to BM Lite, and is it better? It's a question for you, Alastair.
Okay, yes. So just to put some context on that, we have two significant industry changes going through, one of which is paused in advance of the other. So the first one to go through is TER, which is the Trans-European Replacement Reserves Exchange. TER is expected to go live in December 2019. So it's just over a year and a half away. That's not a real-time market, it's a 30-minute ahead market, and it delivers power in 15-minute chunks. Now, there is quite a significant difference between a real-time market and a 30-minute plus market. So there is there's a significant difference in the way in which system operator will dispatch reserves if they have to make a forward choice. So it's not exactly the same. However, balancing mechanism access of a sort will be facilitated through TER. And what we hope that will follow after that will be something called BM Lite, which does allow BM participation for a variety of participants who are not energy suppliers. Now, that's not going to get started until TER has progressed, and therefore we don't know when, and we don't know exactly in what form BM Lite is going to come through. It might be fine, it might be restricted. We're not waiting, and we have every intention of progressing BM Lite as well when it comes forward, because there may well be customers who want to participate in BM Lite, who want to participate in TER, but don't necessarily want to use Flexitricity as their energy supplier, and that's fine. But right now, there's an opportunity for energy managers and small generator or battery owners who have that capability to monetize their flexibility now.
Great, thank you. Sticking with you with the next question, Alastair. Are other aggregators providing BM access, and how will your contract be better or different from those?
Yeah, so this is a question that comes up a lot. The answer is no. We don't see other aggregators or indeed other companies offering the BM access that we're offering through Flexitricity Plus. And there are a number of reasons that we know this. One of them is that all trades in the balancing mechanism are public. They're all published, and we have done a lot of analysis on what's going on. There are companies with small generators participating in the BM, and some of those are third party, but that's not the same as taking customer accounts and customer flexibility and putting it in. And the other main reason that we know this is that while the legislative framework has been in place for 17 years for us to do this, most of the facilities that we're drawing on in order to do this live and in the balancing mechanism are still in shrink wrap. And we're going through the process now with National Grid of taking off the shrink wrap and actually activating these facilities.
Okay, great. Question for you, Ron. What's the benefit of working with Flexitricity rather than one of the big suppliers? How do you expect to compete with them?
Okay, so look, I think from Flexitricity are expert in the management and the dispatch of flexible load and generation. We've got 10 years track record here. We've got a 24/7 control room. We know how to dispatch flexible capacity into the markets, whether that be through ancillary services or whether that be through into the balancing mechanism or for peak management. That is our area of expertise. We know that, and we know that very well. Doing that reliably into the balancing mechanism is very, very important. And our track record is proven there that we know how to connect, manage, and dispatch flexibility reliably into the marketplace. And a lot of the big sites can't claim that track record or that capability within the marketplace. I think one of the other fundamental things for me is that we don't own any assets, so we are not conflicted at all in how we are positioning assets into the marketplace. Obviously, suppliers do participate. They participate with their own assets, and there's got to be an inherent conflict there as to how they deal with their own assets in comparison to any connected assets they may have in the portfolio. So I think from a Flexitricity point of view, how do we compete? Well, we compete on track record, we compete on service delivery. The balancing mechanism is a market. Of course, there is an analysis that goes into how best to position and best to price within that marketplace, but it is a market that we can participate on a level playing field with everybody else. It's how good is your analysis, how good is your dispatch, how good is your reliability, and dispatching of flexible generation and load is what we do well.
Great, thank you, Ron. Alastair, my current supply contract runs out in March 2019. What steps are required to transfer to Flexitricity, and will this be a seamless transfer?
Yeah, that's a very important question, that one. There are two sides to transfer. Firstly, the transfer of an energy supply account or a set of energy supply accounts is governed by industry processes. And in accordance with, in fact, the management of these processes is one of the crucial elements of accreditation of a new supplier. So we're working with well-established system providers to ensure that that is seamless and works directly every time in accordance with those standard processes. So that part, yes, is straightforward. The difficult part is always the same, which is the engineering to connect flexible capacity to control systems that can then monitor the capability and reflect that into the balancing mechanism in real time and offer that as a live resource in a reliable way. So we have spent a long time developing the ways in which we do that. It's an engineering process. It's quite hands-on. We have a team of engineers who go to sites, who attend sites, who learn the characteristics of the sites from the site operators, install outstations, connect those to control systems, and program in the rules of engagement for that particular site. So that is quite technical, and that process can take some time, and that is essential to the participation in the balancing mechanism on a live basis.
Great, thanks very much. And sticking with you, Alastair, for the next question, how does the pass-through energy supply contract work in practice?
Okay. Probably easiest to take an example such as a combined heat and power district heating type of installation would be the most interesting one to explore there. So the CHP energy center operator knows that there is a certain heat load of the customers that needs to be supplied, and they can decide that there may be a certain number of hours in the day, depending on season, when they know they need to supply that heat from the CHP. So what they can do through Flexitricity Plus is see forward prices, curve prices in the wholesale market for both the gas and the electricity concerned, and make their own decisions about when they choose to fix those prices. So they essentially buy the gas and sell the electricity ahead of time. As real time approaches, or as the day of operation approaches, there's a day-ahead auction, and they can refine that position. They may, for example, have an update from weather, or it may be there's simply been growth in heat load, or there may be a plant failure, and that they can use the day-ahead auction to further refine that position. At that point, they have essentially created an operating schedule and set up the costs and the profits associated with running that business. So then we take over an operational timescales. We know the schedule. We teach our outstations that schedule continuously. It's refreshed continuously. And we additionally take the flexibility that's there, whether it's if the CHP is due to be on, then it's potentially capable of turning off if the price is right, subject to the heat constraints. If the CHP is off, then it's potentially able to turn on. So for example, a balancing mechanism event could occur that advances the switch on of the CHP in the morning. And there could be a balancing mechanism event that causes the CHP to turn off at some point during the day. And at that point, you rely on the heat store. Or conceivably, if it really is a day when the whole market is long on electricity, it's very sunny, for example, then if you do have heat load, then you potentially shift the boilers. Because why would you use the CHP to generate electricity when the market would otherwise be getting rid of electricity by turning down wind farms or constraining off solar farms? So this means that there's it falls into a two-stage process. Set up the business ahead of time, right? Refine it to day ahead, and then we monetize the flexibility in real time after that.
Great, thank you. I've had a question come in on through the chat, which is actually similar to one that was pre-submitted. So I think we'll take that one now to make sure we get through it. So this is another one for you, actually, Alastair. Can sites participate in the balancing mechanism and ancillary services? And the same question for the capacity market.
So I'll answer the capacity market one first. The answer is yes. The capacity market, by design, I was in on a number of the design meetings way back in 5 years ago. The capacity market is designed to include all other energy market activities, including ancillary services and energy trading. On the ancillary services side, so frequency response, demand turn up short-term operating reserve, fast reserve, it is not possible to trade ad hoc and freely in the balancing mechanism at the same time as providing an ancillary service. The point of an ancillary service for National Grid is to forward contract the reserve and response that it needs in order to know that it can balance the system economically. And one aspect of these services is it sets the price. And free balancing mechanism trading allows you to set the price yourself on the day. So there is a definite and deliberate trade-off there. We can manage that. If people have their own constraints, then we can work to those as well. Some assets work well in some ancillary services some of the time, and that can change from time to time, but you can't do both at the same time.
Great, thank you. Question for you, Ron. Can I hand the site over to Flexitricity? Will you do some day-ahead and intraday trading for our sites as well as provide a BM access? I need this holistic service for a front-of-meter site.
Short answer, yes. I think it's just going back to one of the previous points that Alastair was making. This is all site specific. We need to understand the technical parameters, the operational parameters on site to basically establish what flexibility is there, when it can be best monetized in the marketplace. We need to understand what the day job is for the asset. If it's a front of the meter asset that it can be completely merchant in the marketplace, then of course we can take that through the day ahead, the intraday, and the balancing mechanism. If you're talking about an asset that has a day job like a CHP, then we clearly need to respect that. There may be some ancillary service participation there as well. But yes, can Flexitricity take that asset through and provide that holistic service? We can, and that's the whole purpose of setting up this proposition. Great,
thank you. Alastair, what do you think will happen to the BM value if you take significant volume into the market?
Okay, this is also known as the cannibalization problem, and it's something that I think many renewable developers are aware of. That when a particular type of activity or resource becomes significant in scale, it starts to change the price of that resource or the value of that resource in the market. In principle, if we double or treble the capacity of flexibility available in the balancing mechanism, then that of course will change the price. But that's if all other things are equal, but they're not equal. So we have very soon the Western Link, the Western Bootstrap as it's called, will remove the constraint on wind farms in Scotland exporting electricity across the interconnectors into the English and Welsh markets. And the result of that will be significant increase in volatility from that resource, which was previously capped by the constraint. We have continuing solar growth. We have continuing wind growth and offshore and onshore wind farms. We see growing issues in terms of managing not just the peaks, but the troughs in the energy market just now. We will also see a change to the behavior of a number of sites in respect of the triad mechanism as that is reviewed. So the forces that line up on the balancing mechanism to push it in particular directions are very substantial. And therefore it takes an awful lot of capacity to defeat that effect. So in principle, yes, but in practice, with National Grid, recently there was a day when National Grid had to use the balancing mechanism to reposition 50% of the market. That was, I think, last summer. In days of yore, they used to say that the balancing mechanism was for 2% of the electricity. It already averages well over 5%. So the BM is not a small market, and it can take some megawatts.
Great, thank you. Question for you, Ron. Could you talk us through how balancing mechanism access would work in practice for CHPs? What do you actually do at gate closure to participate in the BM?
Okay, so again, for a CHP, fundamentally there's going to be a day job there. There is a heat requirement that's driving an operational regime for that CHP. Through dialogue with the site, through understanding the site constraints operationally, duty cycles, technical parameters, ramp rates, whatever, we can build up a picture of when that asset is available and when that asset is not available for us to participate in services or indeed directly into the balancing mechanism. So when we have that understanding of what the duty cycle is, we will also liaise with site to understand, well, okay, what's the cost of generation? So if we were to offer up capacity into the market, what is the cost of generation? And then we can set a minimum price at which we could put that offer into the marketplace. But conversely, if the asset is running and it has a heat store, then we can say, well, okay, what would be a suitable cost or value to bid that down in the marketplace. So understanding site-specific parameters, agreeing the commercial constraints with the asset owner, we can then sit with a clear framework where we understand the costs of offering up and bidding down that asset in the marketplace. We'll look at what we believe the market activity is and what we understand to be the optimal price in that market, and then we will choose to place a bid and offer in that's specific to that site characteristics and parameters. And clearly, if that bid and offer is accepted, or bid or offer is accepted in the marketplace, then we have the dispatch capability to dispatch that fully automated into the marketplace to conclude that transaction.
Great, thank you. Question for you, Alastair, that I think is sort of loosely linked to the previous question that you had. Most pressing question is around understanding how Flexitricity can represent multiple parties, often with similar or identical assets, into the balancing mechanism or other markets, whilst maintaining parity, fairness of dispatch and revenue, without the assets cannibalizing the revenue that an unbiased approach might take.
Good question.
It's a good question, and the short answer is we do this now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already in response and reserve services, taking assets which are similar. We're pricing them in a stack to the system operator, presenting the system operator with a choice of assets, and so that theoretical conflict clearly already exists. It's fundamental to being an aggregator. So the first thing, we have the independence. We don't own our own assets, so nobody's competing against our gear. And the second thing is, when we present megawatts to National Grid now, and when we present them in the balancing mechanism, it will be on the basis of the capabilities and the costs associated with the megawatts concerned. So if two people genuinely do have identical CHP sites or battery sites, or load sites, where their dynamic capabilities are the same, where their costs of delivery are the same, then they're going to sit at the same price point. And if they're in the same location, then they're going to be hit together or not at all, just as they already are in our, for example, short-term operating reserve work. But the other point to make is that really it is very rare for two assets to be genuinely identical. Those nuances, those slight differences in on time, in cost of generation, in cost of consumption, in cost of foregone consumption, they tend to create an environment where every asset actually does look subtly different from its peers when you look at them in real time with live process data.
Great, thank you. Ron, how many hours can I expect to run in the balancing mechanism as a small front of the meter site?
Okay, so again, asset specific. So let's look at a gas engine participating in the marketplace. We can only do this by looking at historical information, hindcasting, and choosing price points in the marketplace. But as we discussed earlier, that we will understand the cost of generation. We will set a price point in the marketplace depending on where we believe the market is at any one point. If we look at that historically, for a gas engine, we'd probably say about 2,500 hours per annum would be a reasonable estimate of the number of hours that you'd be dispatched for a balancing mechanism trade. That would probably be on the basis of about 1,500 starts in the marketplace. So that's the kind of order of magnitude if you're looking at a small front of the meter asset.
Great, thank you. And staying with you, Ron, for the next question. What's currently the most lucrative option for battery developers, and how is that likely to change in the future?
Well, look, the stack that's always articulated for battery developers is frequency response coupled with capacity market participation, and I think in today's market that's probably where the money is just now. There's maybe a bit of peak shifting in there as well, but front of the meter that's not going to be relevant. I think. Going forward, we know, and I think the market is all the market commentators are suggesting that the frequency response market will become oversubscribed, and that is going to result in some price erosion. How steep and how deep you think that price erosion will go, I think there's various different opinions in the market. But today, in today's money, it's certainly in the frequency response markets coupled with capacity market. But importantly, we know that as the volume increases in that marketplace and the tender cycles that are most likely to shorten month ahead on services just now, they're most likely to shorten. The fact that tender rejection may become far more frequent in the marketplace, it's good for battery operators to have another string to their bow, and the balancing mechanism can offer that if there is a rejection within the frequency response markets. But at some point, these price curves will cross, and the balancing mechanism will become a more commercially optimal place for a battery to operate rather than directly participating in the frequency response markets. So within Flexitricity, we clearly have capacity market ancillary services and the balancing mechanism covered as part of our market access portfolio. So we can move capacity from services to balancing mechanism depending on where the optimal value is at the time. It's all about creating that agility for the asset owner.
Great, thank you. There's been another question posted on the chat function. I'm actually going to pick that one up in a few moments' time. It's similar to one that we've previously been asked, pre-submitted. So we'll come around to that one in a few moments. Before that, though, Ron, another question for you. Can you explain the actual BM bid offer submission process? We talked through this in a previous question, but will this process be fully managed by Flexitricity, or will the customer be involved?
No, we will fully manage this process within our 24/7 control room in Edinburgh. We clearly will set up the dialogue with the customer to understand the parameters around their operational technical constraints, understand their cost of generation, understand their appetite within the balancing mechanism, and we will have a price at which we can offer up capacity and a price at which we can bid down capacity, and that will be our guide for that site. And then clearly with our team in here who are driving the energy supply business, then they will be looking at the market. They will be looking at the capacity available within our portfolio, and they will be placing the bids and offers directly into the marketplace from here. But that will clearly be governed by the parameters that have been agreed at site level. So we will manage it on behalf of our contracted energy partners, subject to the parameters that we've agreed with them up front.
Mm-hmm. I think just the sort of important thing to add to that as well is that we have a account management team here at Flexitricity, and we'll be working with all the energy partners, so that will remain dynamic in terms of the strategy and the parameters, and we'll be working with the energy partners on that all the time. Great. Okay, thank you, Alastair. does Flexitricity Plus give you more visibility on the revenue opportunities you could secure every year for your clients?
Okay. The electricity markets and the ancillary service markets have a bit of a troubled history when it comes to long-term contracts and forward certainty. In fact, there are a number of forward ancillary contracts that National Grid took on a number of years ago, which have never actually been used because the market moved after they were set. So there isn't necessarily customer benefit in the wider sense to these forward contracts. So the same is true in the balancing mechanism. It is a real-time market. It is intended to be a real-time market. That's the way it's supposed to work. It is not necessarily to National Grid's interest or the customer's interest to freeze out the long term, because that can freeze it out in the wrong place. On the other hand, an energy customer or a generator, CHP or hydro or anything like that can look at the forward markets and make choices. And as far ahead as the forward electricity markets are looking, those prices are available. So it is relatively easy to look a year to potentially 2 years ahead in terms of the value and the cost of running an energy operation, and to secure prices in that timescale. And that is one of the things that Flexitricity Plus does, and it allows customers to take out the cost of external risk management and in-house the risk management on the basis that they have the capability to manage that risk in a physical way rather than a financial statistical way. So that transparency is there. But one thing that we're very careful of doing is an example to explain this. If a hydro developer with a reservoir chooses a fixed export tariff for their energy, then they've killed any flexibility value that they had in that asset, because no matter when they run, they will get the same price. But the grid is for sharing, and the grid is intended to send price signals about time of day, about what's happening right now elsewhere in the market. This is a short-term market. This is short-term gain and short-term value. And over the long term, that builds up into a track record, which you can look at, you can hindcast, and you can see, and you can look at the fundamentals, and it builds up a picture of fundamental value in flexibility monetized by short-term awareness and action.
Great, thank you very much. Sticking with you, Alastair, what's the anticipated gross margin a gas resub can make from participating in the BM?
So we obviously do our own analysis, and we spend a lot of time looking at CHPs as examples, and often in doing so, we sort of oversimplify it by ignoring the heat customers and the value of heat. So that's what you have to do if you're doing a generic model, because the value of heat is extremely site specific, and it depends on size of heat stores and nature of heat customers. So just doing that, we see a number that comes out from hindcasting of around 90,000 megawatts installed. I think Aurora did some research and came up with a number of about 70,000 megawatts. So that's where we see the range. And obviously, when you get into the site specifics as to what that site is doing, is it front off behind the meter? Does it have a local electricity load? Does it have a heat load? Then you refine that model on the basis of that location.
Right, thank you. There's a couple of questions that have been submitted. The first one of these I'll ask Ron, and then the second one I'll come to you on, Alastair, that's been submitted. So the first one, similar to one that's been pre-submitted, we have front of meter battery projects ready to install. Our funder needs some certainty of income before spending. Does the addition of Flexitricity Plus help you to give a funder a backstop on income?
So we're asked this question constantly on ancillary services as well as as balancing mechanism participation. So if the question is really, are we going to underwrite some revenue in the market on the back of BM participation, then the short answer to that is no. I mean, just going back to Alastair's answer to 2 questions ago, we need to be careful that we're not destroying the value in the market that is available for a flexible asset. Alastair talked about an example of hydro there. This is about a market that has a track record. We can hindcast, we can see the volatility within that marketplace, and pinning a price or guaranteeing a price within that market is fundamentally going to destroy the value that that asset can achieve in the marketplace. So the short answer is no. We want to basically win business on the basis of our ability to extract value from the market, given our knowledge, given our insight, given our expertise, and given our track record in dispatch, and providing fixed prices on the back of that is not something that I think is in the best interests of the asset owner or indeed the market, full stop.
Great, thank you. And the second question that was posted, this one for you, Alastair. Can you comment on low calls in the BM for DAS DG during recent spikes driven by beast from the east?
Yeah, there are two factors in there. It was windy. It was a record-breaking day. 13.6 gigawatts. I forget the exact number. Was estimated by combining both the embedded and transmission-connected wind. That was a record breaker. The total over the 24 hours was 29.6% of the nation's electricity came from wind. So that was a significant factor. The other factor was the gas price. Gas is expensive when it's actually a gas crisis that's partly pushing the market. So that's one of the reasons why the balancing mechanism is so important, because in the balancing mechanism, the prices are set 60 minutes ahead, not 2 years ahead. And so it is possible for somebody who's turning gas into electricity to choose to price that resource so as to ensure that they're covered for their costs, as they should be. Now, what you saw during the beast from the east was actually a big fuel switch. So basically coal came back on. And the presence of coal in the market essentially places a cap on the extent to which the electricity consumer absorbs high gas prices. And that was active on that day. So high gas prices can be avoided by burning coal. That's true now. It's not true tomorrow, because we know we're closing the coal stations that we have. And that will result in, when it has to be gas, when there's nothing else in the system, the electricity price will reflect the gas price on the day through the balancing mechanism.
Okay.
So I've just seen a question come through there about gas recips, and the figure that Alastair quoted earlier on, whether that was a net benefit. So yes, that's a net benefit. I think in the analysis that we do internally, we've calculated the cost of generation for a gas recip, and yes, we've netted that off the 70 to 90k that Alastair quoted.
But as I said, we ignore the value of in the generic model. We ignore the value of the heat.
Yeah.
There's another question that's been submitted. What are your future projections on the system in regards to negative or positive imbalance? For instance, do you expect that renewables are more likely to create a predominantly long system?
Predominantly long. Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say predominantly long, because the length of the system is a lot to do with the forward trading. In fact, it's driven by the forward trading that's occurred. And if people trade well and they use forecasts, which are becoming gradually better and better, then they will potentially be trading to a balanced system. What it does create is a need for negative margin. That is absolutely the case. We've already seen significant requirements for National Grid to dip down and to work hard to turn down generation and to turn up consumption during difficult trough periods, which can occur weekend afternoons quite easily. Windy nights are now pretty common.
Right, thank you. We've just posted on the chat function there. We've about 15 or 20 minutes left. So yeah, please encourage you to keep submitting questions and keep this as interactive as possible. It's getting some good questions, so please keep those coming. There are three more of the pre-submitted questions to work through. Another one here for you, Alastair. I'm interested to hear how end users, major contractors, ICPs and IDNOs can develop a more cohesive and competitive offering, which also incorporates building flexibility into the services that they offer to access these markets.
Well, I mean, I could give a very simple answer and say, talk to us during project development would be one answer. That is obviously part of the story. I think in more generally, it's about thinking beyond the confines of the basic setup of the project. So if you're developing a solar farm, for example, and you're on a constrained connection, because that's what people are getting now, then you're probably considering a battery. And you consider the battery in terms of its ability to manage the constraint on that connection and increase the value of the renewable resource. That's fine. But you only have that issue maybe 4 months of the year. And so you've got 8 months of the year when that battery doesn't actually have a particularly important role at that site because the connection is not constrained. Local demand is high. The network can use the electricity you generate. The battery is redundant. Therefore, that battery has a job to do in either ancillary services or in the balancing mechanism. And our job is to monetize that within those constraints. Very important to remember, the balancing mechanism is an ad hoc market. You come with what you've got when you've got it. And that volume can change every half hour if that's the case. And the other thing to say is within that whole portfolio, there's a concept that's sometimes referred to as grid defection, as sort of a form of islanding where people essentially take their loads off the grid or at least remain connected, but they attempt to achieve a form of energy independence. And there's value in that. But there's also value in remembering that the grid is for sharing, and there are requirements out there that may not be within your electricity island that you can serve. And so including that thinking in the analysis of what that project should look like will potentially result in more storage, if it's whether it's electricity or hot water or whatever, and just a look at the manageability and the flexibility that you're bringing in there. So back to the short answer, bring us in at the early stage.
Great. The next question, we've covered a reasonable amount of this off in the previous answer. Is it suitable for renewables projects?
Yeah. Okay, so the primary target of Flexitricity Plus in terms of renewables is dispatchable renewables. So we're talking about hydro, principally with impoundment. We're talking about biogas, potentially, where there's gas storage, landfill gas, biomass, renewables where there is an inherent energy store, and that can, in fact, obviously be a battery. It is not particularly designed for non-dispatchable renewables. We haven't created this in order to emphasize routes to market for wind farms per se, or for solar farms per se. They could, if they chose to do so, use the transparency and their own forecasting capabilities, which may be very locally honed, and that might be quite important and differentiator, to put their capacity into the wholesale markets without having somebody else take statistical risk premiums from them. But that's not the primary focus. It's about dispatchable renewables in the main.
Great, thank you. And this is the final question that were of those that were pre-submitted. So yeah, if anyone does have any final questions, then please post them in the chat function. Ron, a question for you. Outside the UK, what other European markets is Flexitricity interested in capitalising on?
Okay, so as most of you will know, Flexitricity are a wholly owned subsidiary of Alpic AG, who are a large Swiss-based energy generation and services business. And Alpic have got a significant European footprint, both for energy services, their commercial buildings division, and the digital and commerce division, which is where they do all their gas and power trading. So whatever we do in Europe has to strategically fit with what Alpic wish to do in Europe. But as I say, they have broad coverage. Do we have ambitions there? Yes, we do, and we are proactively working on these just now. We have a small presence in France, right now. We're dispatching assets in the French market. When we look at the European markets, you know, fundamentally for the type of work that Flexitricity do, then the regulatory environment is clearly very important. The generation mix within that geography is very important. The presence of competition in that market is important as well. It validates the fact that the market's there and that there is an opportunity to participate. So we've done quite a bit of work internally and with Alpic, looking at the various European markets, and we do have a subset of territories that we plan to enter. So, you know, Alpic are pushing hard and have very good business in France, clearly in Switzerland, and Italy, also in Germany. And these markets are all markets that are of interest to Flexitricity in one shape or form. France certainly now. Italy is a very good opportunity for an organisation like ours. Germany, regulatory environment getting there, but not quite there yet, to give full access through. And the Swiss market is an open market, no capacity market there, but it's an open market for the delivery of ancillary services and for the management of flexibility. So yes, from a European expansion perspective, we will do that in conjunction with Alpic, and we'll do that in the territories that are open to demand response, but two are strategically aligned with what Alpic want to do within their European portfolio.
Yeah. It's probably just worth mentioning in passing that Alpic is present from the Baltics to the Balkans, from Scandinavia to Iberia.
Absolutely.
So right across Europe.
Great. Well, thank you very much to Ron and Alastair. That's brought us to the end of the questions that have been submitted on the chat function and submitted ahead of the session. So we'll just wait a few more moments. If anyone has any final questions that they want to ask, please post those now. This session will be available on YouTube after the event on the Flexitricity YouTube channel. So yeah, you can please feel free to pass this around to colleagues, and if you have any further questions, then please come and talk to us. Yeah, so I think can't see anyone else typing, so I think we'll close things there. And thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I hope it was useful for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.